John McCain, running on the claim that he understands national security issues better than do the Democrats, issued a statement today on the State Department's passport breaches, referring to them in our third story tonight only as a matter of privacy, apparently not believing that 6 years after 9/11, no one should be able to access sensitive information, including social security numbers, about 3 powerful U.S. senators on 4 separate days, let alone non-government employees of 2 private companies, let alone inside the State Department itself, let alone without top State Department officials allegedly not finding out until months after the first episode, and finding it all out from a newspaper. McCain today saying if anyone's privacy was breached, then they deserve a full apology, or an apology and a full investigation. No mention of security implications, no call, as Senator Obama has called, for congressional inclusion in the investigation. Turn now to Hillary Mann Leverett, not only a former Foreign Service officer herself, but also a former staffer at the National Security Council. Great, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
In what way could this have happened, do you think, that should not spark concerns about security?
I don't think there's any way this could have happened that would not spark concerns about security. This, at minimum, is a management failure. And I think it even says more about the administration and the running of government agencies. We've seen this kind of a lack of an ability to anticipate a major event. Here we have a presidential campaign, a contentious one, with people's files that have been gone through before in prior campaigns. They didn't anticipate it. Similar in some circumstances how they didn't anticipate what would happen with Hurricane Katrina or the war in Iraq. They just don't do well at anticipating or management.
The files include social security number, mother's maiden name, 2 very familiar terms to anybody who's ever been online and bought anything or registered anywhere under any circumstances, the stuff that identity theft is made of. Are these not the kinds of data that the federal government is supposed to keep secret, especially about powerful officials, because they are basically keys to unlock other information, the sort of stuff that spies, blackmailers enjoy?
Certainly. And I think for high-level prominent Americans, as well as for everyday Americans, your social security number and your mother's maiden name are critical components to information that could be used to blackmail you financially and politically. But even more so, these files contain, particularly for people who lived overseas, and in this scenario, Obama is more vulnerable than either Hillary Clinton or John McCain. For someone who lived overseas, your file could include a lot of different data about where you went to school, what happened when you were at school, if there was a custody dispute involving your parents. Anything that would be normally documented here in the United States or might be part of a police record here in the United States, if you're living overseas, as Obama did, it would be documented in your passport file at the U.S. Embassy. If you went to various countries, if you traveled there, if you tried to renounce your U.S. citizenship, that would be in the file.
The structure of how this story got out, the top State Department officials apparently learned it from the Washington Times when they were called for comment. The Washington Times learned about it from some unnamed official or officials in the Bush administration. What questions does that process raise that somehow members of the administration got this information before even middle-level management at State did?
Well, from my experience inside the Bush administration, this is actually, unfortunately, far too typical. What happens in the Bush administration, if you see something that's not going right, if you have a question about something, whether it's about high policy or management issues, you don't really have a choice. Your voice is not listened to. It is not respected inside the administration. You have very little choice other than to go to the press. So I'm not surprised here that officials in the State Department probably thought their voice wasn't being heard up the food chain at the State Department and therefore went to a newspaper, and maybe one of the only newspapers where they knew the reporter. Unfortunately, we have seen this time and time again within the Bush administration. It's not a surprise.
All right, and what are we to make of the fact that this had also happened in the first Bush's State Department, and it was directed then at a Democratic presidential candidate named Clinton?
You know, we were promised that after this was done to President Clinton, when they went through his files to see whether he renounced his citizenship to avoid the draft, a serious political charge at the time, we were assured that security controls would be put in at the State Department. But I think, like so many things in this administration, those type of critical security and management controls were never taken seriously.
Hillary Mann Leverett, the former National Security Council Director for Iran and the Persian Gulf. Thanks for joining us. Have a good weekend.
Thank you as well.